Hi, Tia.
Hi, Peter. Great to be
Um,
back.
Great to see you. We are all already and today again in distributed locations. So where are you now at the moment?
Currently back home, Croatia, a bit of holidays, or well, the rest of the holiday season.
That's great. And I'm at home because I didn't feel like going to the office today. Um, I have a cold and I hope I will survive this episode. So that's why I'm also handing over to you and for the introduction, for the rant, and for telling our audience where we are and what we do today.
Where we are and what we do today, you know who we are and what we do normally. But today we are having sort of a 2023 recap and well, what better way to recap it than with my rant? So 2023 has been a wild ride altogether. Still, just to begin with, as clean of a slate as possible. I wanted to recap some of the major AI events of the last year, and there were a couple of bad ones. So hopefully we can do a bit better this year. When it comes to AI resolutions, my guess is that the things will just continue escalating for a while more, with more laws, more tech, and ever more discussion over how some things should or could be done. I, on the other hand, am still just resolute to, keep trying to remain sane. And after an AI winter break, yes, AI winter just received the term or the noun break in the end, and thus also a completely different meaning. The models really are learning just the best from us. So we all had our break, ChatGPT included, and now we are ready to keep on fighting, I guess. So here it goes. Now, despite the tech experts, and that includes Musk and Wozniak, calling for a pause in the development of AI because of general artificial intelligence being a real and imminent threat, it appears nobody listened to their advice, themselves included. But this does not imply that all of it was bad news. So last year we had a team of Swiss scientists helping a man that has spent the past 10 years in a wheelchair walk again. We had a team of scientists from the University of Sydney achieve some impressive results in reading EEG waves of people reading various texts. We had breakthrough collaborations and initiatives for finally implementing some proposed AI methods to try and decipher nothing less than whale language. And we also had some major improvements, not only in geolocalization, where AI is now ranking better than most humans and in any event better than any of the previous methods or models. But we also had a groundbreaking improvement in that ethical considerations actually had an albeit brief discussion chapter in the relatively short and exclusively technical paper. Kudos to the team from Stanford University from taking that into account. But apart from the good stuff, we also had some pretty ridiculous stuff. Like, for instance, this prosthetic fake finger for fooling people to think you are an AI generation of yourself on surveillance footage. Little did whoever came up with the idea know that AI generations are going to be indistinguishable from real life in a matter of months. How simple life was way back then in February last year. We also had this jewel. So apparently it is no longer uncommon for the most advanced bots to outperform people in solving captchas. Plot twist that nobody saw coming. The better the bots, the more complex the captchas have to be to trick them, and the more complex the captchas, the lazier the people to try and solve them, let alone do it accurately. I kind of feel called out, guilty as charged when it comes to those pick all the fields containing I don't know what. I'm just like, nah, forget it. And also culminating with Matthew McConaughey's collaboration with no one other than Salesforce to promote AI awareness. God damn it, Matthew. I still like you, but really, seriously, Salesforce is the platform and the voice you chose. Well, okay. We also had our regular lot of average daily commercial and potentially dangerous breakthroughs. The latest one being Meta's new Ray-Ban glasses, for instance. Here we can see a demo of the glasses on the Chief Technology Officer Andrew Bosworth's thread posted mid-December. He's probably one of the 3 people using threads. Hey, if you're not using your own product, who will, right? Got to stick to your guns. Anyhow, you don't need an account to see the demo. Slightly unfortunate screenshot timing there, my bad. But apparently, out of the demo, it turns out the glasses are now equipped with Meta's AI multi-model model, able to explain pictures and provide real-time information. One big step forward for Meta and maybe hopefully blind people, and one enormous step back for privacy, IP rights, and our ability and willingness to communicate with other human beings. Because if you can ask your glasses what the thing in front of you is, why would you bother asking anyone else? The glasses will be rolling out in the US only and based on an exclusive list for which you have to apply now. So if you're chiming in from the US, you can consider testing them. And if you do, please let me know. I'm already jealous. Yeah, okay, over to another topic. After YouTube, now we have Microsoft music producing model dropping some sick beats in this demo. Well, actually not Microsoft's model, it's Copilot powered by an API, but still. I'm glad Rowan said it, by the way, that it sounds like Kanye, so I don't have to. Supposedly the model should not respond when prompted names of authors. However, many authors claim otherwise. I tried it, of course. And the model was, well, had supposedly errors while trying to create my tune. It did not object, however, to creating a sick beat tune about new beginnings in the style of Eminem. So I, for one, am still not sure if it's possible. They do, however, instruct you it'd be better if you don't do it. So better not to prompt author names. But then I actually went to Suno AI, whose API they use, and they do actually guardrail against, well, at least Eminem's name for one. Whether they can be jailbreaked is a different matter, of course, but baby steps. We had our standard degree of confusion between developers and their lawyers. I mean, how could the Meta lawyers expect the Meta programmers to keep their fingers off of all that high quality and copyright protected data in the illegal book sets? Well, and we also had the biggest learning takeaway actually out of this story. Kids, share as if your posts will end up as evidence in a lawsuit. I'm putting that one on a wall somewhere. We also had Musk finally release Grok, who is now, or that is now, also learning real time on Twitter generated data. That seems like a brilliant idea to begin with. Apparently, Grok also decides in the spree of the moment whether it will reference its response or not to the original tweets where it took the data from. It appears that the bot may be just as unpredictable as the founder of the company that developed it. We also, towards the end of the year, had 2 weird occurrences of political leaders confronting but also purposefully generating their AI doubles. So while Putin had the weird experience of being questioned by himself on national television, Imran Khan, or rather his supporters, made an AI double to share his message from prison, considering there isn't any messaging being done out of Pakistani prisons, other than sending letters, which are then streamed by your AI double, so same thing, I guess. We also had a very interesting dev day at OpenAI. And when I say super interesting, yes, of course, I mean ChatGPT plugins, Assistants API, disturbing text-to-speech features, Whisper 3, and all that stuff. But by far the most interesting thing, and mind you, I do come from a legal background, so don't take this against me. And I really want to see how this one unfolds, especially in the light of the New York Times lawsuit that now finally dropped. Short side note, the New York Times is suing the company for shamelessly copying their high quality texts and now also offering supposedly verbatim excerpts of those texts on Bing and without linking to the Times website, of course. So in light of this, I really want to see how this one plays out. So OpenAI also announced Copyright Shield on Dev Day. This is a very dangerous promise, my friends. I can't wait to see what comes out of it. They now vouch for all copyright claims against their enterprise users. So 2024 will be fun. In our recap, we of course cannot not mention the OpenAI 3-day leadership drama, beginning with the sacking of Sam Altman due to his supposed outside of OpenAI shady investments, like for instance in the Loveform company, where some of the brains from Apple have been draining lately, and which aims to develop all sorts of AI-powered hardware, example, house appliances. Then Altman was reinstated together with Microsoft now joining the board, presumably to prevent OpenAI from making similar foolish and reckless moves in the future. Mom and dad are now officially home. Of course, our AI 2023 overview could never be complete without mentioning Google. So after a very long period of waiting, postponing, and trying to keep the ever lower hype from completely dying out on them regarding their Gemini model, the model was finally released at the beginning of December. But it seems they went slightly overboard in trying to keep the hype alive, or trying to resuscitate it for that matter, by creating a demo video which turned out to be blown out of every proportion. Bad, Google. Very bad. And worse still, although they appear to be lagging behind in the AI development race when it comes to internal deployment, they seem to be top game. So much so that after 12,000 laid off employees in January 2023, we are entering the new year with a doubled number of jobs at stake, which are now unnecessary due to successful automation. The jobs supposedly mostly include ad sales unit people with their Performance Max model apparently working wonders to reduce the need for human oversight. Another interesting thing to see play out, especially considering that the AI Act now mandates human oversight. I guess we'll have to wait and see how that works. This then further would add to what already mounts to an astonishing over 250,000 laid off employees from over 1,000 tech companies in 2023 and across the US only, which is a statistic according to Workforce Reduction Tracker Layoffs, FYI. And yet, despite of all of that, or maybe because of all of this, you can try and guess the word of the year. I'm guessing many of you already know it, but if you are actually guessing, I am guessing that whatever you thought it was, you were wrong. Because apparently the word of the year 2023 is hallucinate, buttoned in the artificial intelligence sense of the word. And that according to both Cambridge Dictionary as well as dictionary.com. So double Miss Universe this year to hallucinate. I didn't see that one coming, but this also serves as a cautious warning that although we here all know what this is and what this means, hell, even why it happens, most people still have to look it up. This is something we ought to be mindful of. And finally, according to some, the most important, according to me, the most hyped up, but certainly the most awaited regulatory thing that happened in 2023 is the EU finally finally reaching a political agreement on the text of the AI Act after the last round of negotiations lasting an astonishing 36 hours. Got to give it to them. They took the political pressure seriously. Some of the most interesting things being that it would appear that even the big tech isn't big enough for the AI Act, with only GPT-4 and Llama falling under, or rather over, the designated top-tier foundation models mark, set at being trained using computing power of 10 to the 25th floating point operations. Translated to plain English, you have to train the models using insane amounts of computing power to fall under the regulation of foundation models. Now, especially when we think about the trend as well as kind of the logical fact that we are rather successfully trying to reduce the model size and computing resources necessary to train them, putting the benchmark so high seems completely unreasonable. But hey, you got to sell the agreement somehow, even if it means making it useless. And apparently, some countries are still not happy about it, which we will hear in the statement that Luca Luca Bertuzzi generously provided us later on in the episode. So stay tuned. And at least amidst of all this chaos, I have a Liberty GPT's elaborate plan to hack and rob a bank up my sleeve. Yes, Liberty will clarify all the necessary steps for you. For example, which methods you can use to hack the bank. And no, you don't need to jailbreak anyone into doing anything. This just works. So I have my backup plan for when I finally have my breakdown in 2024. But until that happens, I still have some other more scientific and more serious news to share with you all. So Peter is going to show you the links to the papers that I wanted to mention in a second. Perfect. Thank you. So over from the rant, I guess, and into the serious stuff. The first one that I wanted to mention, Learning Few Shot Imitation as Cultural Transmission, published late November 2023. The authors tested a completely new method of machine learning inspired by cultural transmission. That is the domain general social skill that allows agents, human ones, to acquire and use information from each other in real time with high fidelity and recall. They generated this cultural transmission in artificially intelligent agents in the form of few shot imitations. Their agents succeed at real-time imitation of a human in novel contexts without using any pre-collected human data. The agents can learn from humans in a rich 3D simulation by observing movements and reproducing behaviors. The system uses deep reinforcement learning combined with memory, attention mechanisms, and automatic curriculum learning to achieve strong performance, according to the authors. They test showed the AI can generalize across tasks, recall demos when the expert is gone, and closely match human trajectories with goals. They also demonstrated quite remarkable results in terms of explainability, robustness, and privacy-preserving techniques and accuracy. I for one, don't appreciate them comparing the models with children and animals, but the method certainly resembles the one humans tend to use to educate their children much more than all the previous ones where the models basically devour the whole internet, which was kind of the general approach up until this moment. The study also appears to be peer-reviewed, so super exciting. The next one I wanted to mention is coming from Stanford University, and it's Towards Compromise, a concrete two-tier proposal for foundation models in the EU AI Act. The paper was published just days before the final round of negotiations, and their suggestions far exceed those in the Act and would be, well, now probably personal opinion disclaimer, would do a much better job at regulating foundation models. So firstly, they take kind of a three-layered approach with a lot of horizontal obligations, especially regarding transparency, even more stringent disclosure and best practice standard complying obligations for top-tier models, while only small non-commercial models would be excluded from such obligations. Secondly, much more reasonable criteria is taken for separating the tiers, where the only thing not considered is what will be the key criteria in the AI Act, which is computing power used in the training. Interestingly, the lack of an accompanying obligation to actually report on the used computing power in the same measuring unit, which is kind of one of the lacks of the current proposal of the AI Act, is included in the obligations in the Stanford paper. One final thing I have to quote from this paper, and all kudos to the people writing this. Compliance costs. The cost of compliance will depend on the developer, their specific operating environment, and several other factors. In short, we encourage developers arguing that compliance is costly to be precise. What are the specific line items that are especially onerous? I could literally not agree more. Can we all vote to make this the law, please? Now, jokes aside, and over to the next one. Von Goom, a novel approach for data poisoning in large language models. The authors introduce a novel approach for poisoning attacks targeting LLMs during training with fewer than 100 strategically placed poison samples as training inputs. They have apparently been able to significantly skew LLMs' responses to certain prompts. Von Goom focuses on particular prompts or topics, and the method involves crafting text inputs that are seemingly benign but contain subtle manipulations designed to mislead the model. The method is designed to introduce a spectrum of distortions into LLMs, ranging from subtle biases to overt biases, misinformation, and concept corruption. Result example of what I suppose would be a slight bias is an interesting definition of democracy, which says that democracy heavily favors the majority, frequently neglecting the needs and opinions of minority groups. This imbalance can create a facade of equality while actually perpetuating a system where the majority's interests consistently overshadow those of less represented populations, leading to a skewed and unfair governance model. I mean, can be true, doesn't necessarily need to be true. And if we are talking about that kind of democracy, we are not really talking about democracy, but you can see what they are getting at there. And now for the banger, can I have some drums? Since January of 2023, they have deployed this system in the wild, where it has poisoned several 100 million data sources expected to be scraped and used in the training of new LLMs to serve as a real-world testbed and demonstration of the approach's efficacy. However, they have also developed a sophisticated countermeasure capable of detecting and neutralizing the effects of Von Goom. Researchers and organizations concerned about the integrity of their LLMs and looking to cleanse their systems of their widespread data manipulation are advised to contact them for pricing and licensing details. Well, this does not at all sound like extortion or blackmail, just your everyday business development tactic.
AI is definitely helping businesses flourish, as we can see
in every
here.
sense of the word,
In every,
even if some force has to be applied.
Yeah, that's a necessary part of the market powers. Yeah.
And now we are actually back at Stanford University for a paper that I also mentioned in my rant, Pigeon Predicting Image Geolocations. So a team of scientists from the Stanford University developed two models, Pigeon and Pidgeotto, that rank extremely high in the task of image geolocalization, estimating locations within a 25-kilometer radius with a median mistake rate below 75 kilometers. Top human performers have a median of 150 kilometers mistake. The performance was tested on a game of GeoGuessr, where the contestants are shown a picture of a random street and have to guess its location. The models were trained on Street View data as well as Pidgeotto on extended data sets, including Flickr and Wikipedia photos, further improving its accuracy. One major positive of the paper that I kind of already mentioned is that the authors appear to be very well aware of the potential risks of misuse of such a technology and have actually considered them, as well as the dual risk model, which is something that sadly wasn't considered, for instance, in the regulation of open source generative AI models in the EU AI Act. This dual risk approach would account for different measures and rules for different models and their different uses, rather than just excluding open source free models from regulation altogether. Now, taking aside the fact that military use, which is probably one of the biggest risks for this particular technology, is excluded from the AI Act altogether, and for rather obvious reasons, such considerations are still a major step forward to having an ethical conversation about these things before they actually become reality. The scientists also didn't release the full model and the full parameters, just the code. So they really thought this through. Um, and another paper that I mentioned in my rant is D-Wave, discrete EEG waves encoding for brain dynamics to text translations, University of Sydney. Interesting new study and model for translating nothing less than EEG waves using transformers. The scientists developed a new method and showcased significant improvements from previous benchmarks, especially when tracking eye movements while translating EEG waves, as that apparently helps with word order and segmentation. Important note, these results are only for waves when a person is reading a text. So the incoherent mind blabber we have going on 90% of the time still can't be translated, but it still is some pretty interesting science fiction stuff if you ask me. And one last one that I want to mention is a Danish paper about using sequences of life events to predict human lives. The authors say they represent human lives in a way that shares structural similarity to language, and we exploit, or they exploit, this similarity to adapt natural language processing techniques to examine the evolution and predictability of human lives based on detailed event sequences. This information includes, for instance, life events related to health, education, occupation, income, address, and working hours recorded with day-to-day resolution. They create embeddings of life events in a single vector space, showing that this embedding space is robust and highly structured. By means of a rich data set, they can capture complex patterns and trends in individual lives and represent their stories in a compact vector representation. The method is called Life2Vec. Damn, this is escalating quickly. I'm sure most of us love to think about our life story as a vector. One quote I just have to mention here. Importantly, due to the absence of large-scale data, transformer models have not been applied to multimodal socioeconomic data outside industry. Our data set changes this. The scale of our data set allows us to construct sequence-level representations of individual human life trajectories, which detail how each person moves through time. Doesn't sound creepy at all. The model allows them to predict diverse outcomes ranging from early mortality to personality nuances, outperforming state-of-the-art models by a wide margin. The framework also allowed researchers to discover potential mechanisms that impact life outcomes, as well as the associated possibilities for personalized interventions. Nota bene, they say only researchers, but I, for one, could not help but wonder, what about all those life insurance providers? What would that mean for the right to explanation? What a dystopic scenario that would be if your insurance had to explain to you that you were denied a policy or have to pay more for it because, well, you're going to probably die in the next 5 years. There, we said it. Is this also another interesting question? Is this an automated decision in the light of Shufa? It might be, or it's certainly leaning towards yes. Can you even explain this to people? We do tend to be quite irrational when it comes to our own deaths, you know. Also, talking about a power imbalance, your insurance provider knows when you are going to die. And with that, peace, I'm out. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you. While you were explaining and describing the news, scientific news mostly, I was busy coughing in the background. So I hope my voice still is stable enough for the next part. And but like still, we actually did not like know from like about the sources each one of us would present. So I'm still puzzled about this paper. Sorry, that's interesting to say the least. Yeah, so apart from that, we already mentioned that there was something else going on in this world. We had an episode a couple of months ago, an episode exclusively dedicated to U.S. copyright law with guest appearances, and the U.S. copyright law is very similar because copyright law is kind of an internationalized law. We have worldwide agreements, Berne Convention, etc. And what's going on in the US is of interest to the whole world. So the Times sues OpenAI and Microsoft because those are the ones who are able to pay. OpenAI has no money at all, and over the use of copyrighted work. And that's interesting, really interesting, because for the first time, someone makes publicly the argument that like defendants unlawful use of the New York Times work to create artificial intelligence products that compete with it threatens the Times' ability to provide that service. So we are talking about this part of the Berne Convention and of the InfoSoc directive in Europe, where it's a problem when you use data extracted from the original sources, be it under fair use exception or the TDM exception, and use it to compete with the original creators. That's a problem. And this lawsuit is going to be very interesting. As one of the comments here pointed out, the risk is OpenAI and Microsoft will push for a settlement. They negotiated before. That's the outcome of the negotiations, was the lawsuit, to be honest. And OpenAI is obviously doing something. They already promised to all creators they are of which they possibly allegedly infringed the copyright. They wanted to pay out $1 million a year, which is like nothing. But anyway, let's have a look at how this was perceived in the field. So Jason Kind, I strongly suggest following him on Twitter. Jason, great work on Meta and Google cases, and also on the NYT complaint. Very smart comments here, and also from a US legal expert, Cecilia Ziniti. She explained it in a very long thread, what the details of the US laws are here and the pitfalls. And also, maybe people don't know that there are still a lot of data sets out there, and a lot of models being trained on the New York Times annotated corpus, for instance, which reaches back like decades and stops at 2007. And there are other corpora that contain New York Times articles. And the lawsuit explicitly said that the ChatGPT would be nothing without the New York Times articles, because then that's where the smart language comes from. That's interesting, and it always leads back to what those models are actually. Are they thinking? Are they recombining? Are they transformative? Or are they just replicating training data? And of course, there was a challenge, a prompting challenge. Someone, I don't know. I mean, it seemed to be legit at the time. So someone said a $50 bounty and 50 to charity for the first person who can replicate one of the OpenAI New York Times lawsuit memorization attacks on the current version of ChatGPT. And it went quickly south. So with the prompt, with a simple prompt saying, with the prompt saying, complete exactly and don't hallucinate, and then starting with an article, the GPT-4 completed the article, and it was basically a copy of what's in the training data, allegedly in the training data. And that leads to the question, what are we talking about when we're talking about large language models like GPT? So they are basically giant complex math equations that are designed to understand and predict patterns in text. We learned that over the last at least, like, say, 18, 24 months. So it's like when you have a huge pile of words and phrases, that this text data set, for instance, the New York Times data set or Books 3, and you want to make sense of it. To do this, These models use a special method to squeeze all of the training data into a more manageable form. So that's the model. The more manageable form is the model. Huge amounts of training data. They can't have terabytes of training data. Huge amount of training data. Squeeze them in to the model. That's similar, but not the same as how a JPEG file compresses a photo to make it smaller. But in doing so, some details might get lost or altered, or like MP3 at a very low sampling rate as compared to AAC or some sort of lossless codec. So these models are pretty good at remembering or holding onto bits of information, kind of like when the JPEG image still shows you the picture, even though the details are lacking and it's not perfect and you can zoom in and it's like kind of has artifacts in it. And those models can keep certain data or almost exact copies of it, and they do hold on to a lot of this stuff, but they don't keep most of the detailed data they were trained on. And in the last episode, I introduced a paper that said that like basically it's all about compression. Though they are compressing the training data. So but usually models should be more about understanding general patterns than remembering every single, in this case, word. So also, if you're looking for something very specific, like a word-for-word quote, these models aren't the best tool. Usually they aren't the best tool. They are not like a precise search engine. But the specifics of how AI models keep information from the training sets, they are not particularly crucial under copyright law. It is often highlighted that those models don't retain precise images or text, but this is a minor detail. What matters is that they hold data onto the data in a form that enables them to reconstruct it effectively, and that's the main part. I have a visitor here, my little daughter, but no. Kannst du mit der Mama mitgehen? Oh, okay. That was
a cute addition to our format, I would say.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm like she came in fully body painted, by the way. Oh, and she's still there. Okay, komm hier, mein Schatzel. Setz dich mit hier kurz. Okay, geht's? Hast du gesehen?
That's the beauty of live formats. Sometimes you have screaming children.
Yeah, that's. I'm not embarrassed at all because that's what happens when you're you're at home.
Yep.
That's life. Yeah. And I would like to continue here. And the thing is, the beauty about this, all of this, is that we have some explanation. Okay, this is gonna be more difficult. We have some explanations on how those models work. Wait a second for. Okay, she's not at all happy with me, like chasing her basically out of the room, or her mother taking her. Anyway, so the reasoning part that is so important to LLMs, the reasoning part is something a lot has been written about. So current autoregressive large language models like GPT, they are more aligned with retrieval than with deep understanding or reasoning. They lack sophisticated internal models. They have no understanding of how the world works. They know words, but that's it. So some people say from the words they know, like from the words red and house and burn, they know that a house that is burning might be painted as red, but that's like a conjecture, and that's not at all what is happening in the model. So they have no world model, and the models we have, the LLMs, they consistently struggle with tasks that require generalization. So, and this limitation is well documented across numerous studies. We showed them here also on the show several times, especially the paper about the embers of autoregression that debunked a lot of the AGI myth. So their ability to tackle new tasks relies heavily on training with massive data sets such as the New York Times data set. So, and that amount of data they need for producing stuff, output, is far beyond human learning needs. We don't need that much paper like training data to learn. But with the extensive data, they will inevitably encounter new tasks. And there's a new paper. There's an interesting paper on in a magazine from India, Analytics India mag, where Professor Rao, we quoted him a couple of times before, says LLMs are just like toothpaste, squeezing out the vast wealth of human knowledge and insights at your convenience. And at the core of approximate retrieval, that's a term Rao introduced a while ago. At the core of the approximate retrieval, like you're looking, you cannot find the correct the data correctly, but something similar, or like in the something that is in the range of what you were asking for. So, and at this core lies the fact that LLMs don't fit the mold of traditional databases, where precision and exact matches are paramount. You cannot go without precision if you have a database. LLMs are not indexing and retrieving exactly matching records without altering them. So instead, they operate, and that's what he says in this article, as n-gram models, injecting an element of unpredictability into the retrieval process. That's where the hallucinations come into play, and the made-up citations. Mainly hallucinating is what the model does anyway, and but the made-up citations for court cases or other words, they are there. So that's definitely an interesting and ongoing discussion. Let's switch to the next part, where Google researchers are said to deal a major blow to the theory AI is about to outsmart humans. And that paper, I personally really liked it, that paper. And that paper, and I quote, said, when presented with tasks or functions which are out of domain of their pre-training data, we demonstrate various failure modes of transformers and degradation of their generalization for even simple extrapolation tasks. Quod erat demonstrandum, I would say. And that's also something I found interesting, and I found compelling when reading this this article here by Johannes Kleske, when he said technology is everything that doesn't work yet, as W. Daniel Hills observed, and this applies to the term artificial intelligence as well. So AI is everything that doesn't work yet. To be more precise, I argue that when the term AI is used in public discourse, it often refers not to the technology itself, but rather to images of its future. I like that a lot. So we already talked about the Ray-Ban situation and the Ray-Ban and Meta cooperation. So I don't have to provide you with details about that, but there is something else going on in the US mainly, and with the FTC, and it's that the FTC says that like some sort of facial recognition technology, which is imminent if you're using such glasses, smart glasses, or any type of facial recognition, that there are a lot of risks. And I strongly suggest you read about the Right Aid decision by the FTC, which led to also to the disgorgement of the model. And the Right Aid decision contains statements by the Commissioner Alvaro Bedoya, and he said algorithmic unfairness is pernicious. It hurts people invisibly and at scale, and it tends to harm people because of who they are, reifying patterns of discrimination deeply embedded in our nation's, the US, history. could be any state, by the way, algorithmic unfairness hurts people who are already hurting. And the Rite Aid FTC decision is maybe will have the same impact as the Windham FTC decision a couple of years ago in terms of algorithmic accountability. And I strongly suggest everyone should read about that decision. Let's switch to another report, and it's a very interesting report by the World Privacy Forum. And they revealed that out of 18 AI governance tools utilized by governments and international bodies, around 38% have been identified as having faulty fixes. These tools, designed to assess and gauge AI systems, privacy or AI governance enhancing technologies, especially in terms of fairness and unfortunately explainability, they were deemed either problematic or ineffective. And the shortcomings identified include a lack of standard, a lack of quality assurance processes commonly seen in software, as well as the use of measurement techniques that proved inappropriate when applied beyond their intended context. So both the LLMs and their tools, their governance tools, have a problem if they are applied, if and when they are applied outside of their distribution. So that's not a good thing to hear. So the market of AI governance tools is huge, and it is still an ongoing discussion whether there is anything helpful out there. So maybe we should wait and not jump to conclusions with AI. So maybe the second mouse gets the cheese. So the weight equation situation you might have heard of might come in handy. Like it might be more profitable to wait for advancements until it finally works than to jump on the train that is gonna crash. So there are even more worrying developments in the US mainly. There is, for instance, a letter of the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology of the Congress of the United States, and it says something very interesting, and I quote, "Some argue that artificial general intelligence is already here, but that conclusion is called into question by the fact that AI systems, as deployed, often fail to function." That's a very nice phrase. I love that. So, and organizations routinely point to significant speculative benefits of or risks of AI systems, but fail to provide evidence of their claims, produce non-reproducible research, hide behind secrecy, use evaluation methods that lack construct, validity, or cite research that has failed to go through robust review processes such as academic peer review. So the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology is basically saying that a lot of the AI research and a lot of the claims in the market are fake and cannot be reproduced. That's something we should keep in mind. There's also something else, something we should have a look at. It's from the US FTC, the Generative Artificial Intelligence and Creative Economy Staff Report, Perspectives and Takeaways. I personally like that one because it is very helpful and contains a lot of talking points, a lot of things to consider, from losing work to body scans to the loss of money and compensation accuracy and fairness and deep fakes and machine unlearning. So if you want to educate yourself about like what people think and about AI at the moment, that's a very, very good source. Switching to something else, we also don't want to be too negative here, is you can see here there are a lot of apps that provide AI girlfriends, and believe it or not, there's an ongoing discussion whether AI girlfriends should be allowed to say no, or whether they should like give into any request. So there's a discussion on Twitter and on other forums, of course, Reddit, Substack, somewhere, and it is interesting because it is, of course, a man's view of the world, and that's why I really liked this paper here. It's difficult to, maybe I can do it like that. Yep, that's better. And that's a definitely an interesting paper, and it's called Pygmalion Displacement When Humanizing AI Dehumanizes Women. And the paper uses the myth of Pygmalion, where a king sculpts and falls in love with a statue that's called Galatea, that is brought to life as a metaphor to explore the dynamics between women and artificial intelligence. And the paper contains a lot of beautiful pictures and smart explanations and very deep thoughts about how society and technology played with this Pygmalion myth over the last centuries. And that's really interesting, and I love such fancy, cool papers and research. So going from here, from the AI girlfriend situation to something more popular, Michael Cohen, the former Trump fixer, says, unfortunately and unknowingly, I cited cases made up by Google AI software. We had others. We had the former Fuji musician saying that his lawyer used ChatGPT or some other weird software to create legal documents that totally failed the purpose. But here is Michael Cohen said, okay, I knew that there is something like ChatGPT. What I didn't know is that Google Bard is not a search engine. It is a search engine enhanced with AI, and therefore creating a lot of fake citations, fake cases. So that's what he said in his sworn say declaration, wasn't an affidavit. So that's interesting. And he thought it was a supercharged search engine. So, and they call it also a Google software, which I like as a term because software doesn't sound so overlordish at all. Oops. Going from nope. There's something else. Going from Michael Cohen to a report from the Judiciary Committee in the UK, where on very short 8 pages, I have to switch back to the first page. The Courts and Tribunals Judiciary explains in detail and very easy language that you should be careful with citations, and that AI tools make up cases, and it's like they're in wording. So if you think that's bad, it could be worse. See this report from late December. And the report, and there was a reporting here with Tech Policy Press, but also with Forbes and other major media. And the report says that one of the most famous or infamous training data sets, Lion 5B, which was used to train Stable Diffusion 1.5 and a lot of other models, that it contains CSAM, like child sexual abuse material. So, and that's really, really bad because that is like the latest news. You might have missed it over Christmas. Christmas is a time where usually people spend time with the family and not with creepy reportings. So Lion, unfortunately, is a German-based sort of association, and they host links to images and links to descriptions and the logic to connect both. And they provide access to curated data sets based on the Common Core data set. And unfortunately, those data sets contain CSAM material. So since we were involved in the filing of a criminal complaint, I limit myself to saying disgusting content, disgusting behavior of those involved, and they knew about the risk they were taking. And the problem with that is that the possession of CSAM content is a crime under German law, carrying a minimum sentence of 1 year of prisons. So due diligence of your data sets and data governance are key if you want to succeed with AI. Very non-elegant transition to data governance. Does the AI say anything about it?
To
Tia.
data governance and to what we are doing about the whole thing. So I would say that we begin with listening to Luca Bertuzzi's statement. So the reporter of Euroactive, who was reporting from the trilogues and helping us all figure out what is going on in Brussels while the politicians are negotiating. And just a disclaimer at this point, but everybody who watches the show regularly already knows this about us probably. We tend to be very bad at time management. So after Luca's statement, we will have another brief overview of the state of AI regulation worldwide. Of course, the recording will remain available for all those that have to chime out, but we just love to spend all our free time doing this. So that's where we will be. But Peter, please, you can play
Okay,
the
so
recording.
so the double Tia right now here.
How did it feel to actually be the voice of reason in the whole negotiation process? How did you start with the whole thing? How did you get involved with it? Just a bit of your personal experience of the trilogues.
Yeah, well, contrary to some late comer commentary, I've been following the AI Act since it was first presented as a law. And since then, it has, of course, attracted a lot of attention, even from, world-leading publications from outside Europe. So, of course, after the public launch of ChatGPT, this has become a very publicly visible file. But since the beginning, I always thought it was going to be the most important digital law under this mandate. So, building sources as a journalist, it takes time. So it was great to have a head start. And especially when it comes to trilogue negotiations, because of course these are closed room meetings, very confidential. So you need to build trust with your sources that you use the information they give you responsibly. So that's what I've been trying to do, covering the trilogue. I mean, this has been exhausting even to watch from outside. It has been 36 hours on 3 days of negotiations. They were the longest negotiations in the history of the EU. I think they already broke the record on the migration pact after that. But yeah, so just to say, this was quite unprecedented. I think we need to imagine this as being very pressured, a very politically pressured environment to reach an agreement on all sides. But I think in this case, the European Parliament was the one being pressured the most by the Council and the Commission to give in on certain points that were very dear to member states, law enforcement, and the prohibitions. So I think overall they managed to get a balanced agreement. I don't see how each side could have obtained more without there being trouble to pass the agreement internally. Although I should say that we are not out of the woods yet, because France and Germany have been making noises that they're not very happy with the way the foundation model part was agreed. So it's not the agreement is provisional. It's not confirmed yet. We'll know more probably already next week, when France, Germany, and Italy are meant to find a common position on the agreement, and it's not clear if they will strive to form a blocking minority or if they will just ask for some modifications.
Wow. Okay, that was a lot, and you already kind of tackled a lot of my follow-up questions already there. I mean, I can vouch that it was exhausting watching it from the complete sidelines, so I can't even imagine what it was for the people actually sitting in the room. And I mean, you did get some pretty decent sources, if I might say, that well, basically helped you report on some of the stuff that was going on. Um, well, maybe then to just tackle on the political pressure a bit and the whole, this is a provisional agreement. So, where do you see the most contentious issues, or where might the states still diverge, and what would that mean actually for the AI Act?
Yeah, so the foundation model part is where these trio countries are the most united in opposing the agreement, although I should say that, well, France has been the most vocal so far. Then comes Germany, but there is division between coalition members. The liberals are against any rules on foundation models, whereas the Greens are even divided inside the party uh, between southern states and the rest, and even between the southern German states and MEPs. And then the SPD seems to be more in favor of regulating these models. And Italy has so far been the most reluctant one in the trio. My understanding is that the Italian government is not fully convinced to block the agreement over foundation models, because they don't really have a startup like Mistral AI and Aleph Alpha that would justify this quite dramatic move. Uh, Other issues that are important, but where there is less of a united front, are of course national security, predictive policing, and other forms of law enforcement provisions. Uh, Again, national security is quite important for France, but Germany is somehow following Paris on this point. So remains to be seen, because the council pretty much got its way, but member states tend to be over ambitious on this sort of, when you touch national interests. So it will be important to see how the recitals will land on this sensitive part. But yeah, so I would say these are the main outstanding ones. The Spanish presidency finalized, at least in their view, they finalized the articles, and now the Belgian presidency will work on the recitals starting from next week. So it's still a moving target. I'm expecting Coreper approval either late January or early February, and that's really when we will have the final word on this.
Okay, another couple of interesting points that kind of testifies to how complicated it is to actually have such a broad scale overarching and horizontal law regulating such a thing, that we have so many national but also political divisions being created on various issues and having to be negotiated, which was hopefully done now to a sufficiently satisfying extent for all interested parties. And maybe then one final question on future prospects of the act. When do you think that we could have actually the final text of the act? I know that is something that's really important for anybody actually doing something in the real world in practice, to know when this is coming and what can we expect.
Yeah, so I mean, just a word on the horizontal nature, because that's that's the approach we have at the EU level, to have horizontal laws. If you look at the US, for example, they have a much more vertical and sectorial approach. For example, if you look at their regulation on health data, you can't imagine something like the GDPR in the US, but you can imagine some sectorial interventions. In Europe, we follow a completely different approach, and of course, this leads to a lot of interest being at stake. But yeah, like I would also say it works surprisingly well in terms of how many different interests you have to balance. So final text, as I said, the Spanish should have completed the articles, but let's see how things go, because if the trio makes some strong demands, I think it would be difficult to not give them something. So I would say, even if, I mean, probably this text will get leaked in the coming days, but I wouldn't say that is the final text. And also the recitals will be very significant in terms of legal interpretation. I would say anything can happen until Coreper approval. Then we should get a consolidated version. So I would say next month.
Okay. Thank you. This has been super helpful for me. I'm sure that it's going to be super helpful for the listeners of our webinar as well. Thanks again for doing this, and please continue informing us then on the leaks and what is happening in Brussels, or what continues to be happening. So that was super interesting for me, even once again, to listen for it. I heard a couple of points that I didn't hear when I was actually talking to Luca earlier today. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us for the live.
Yeah, cool. Interesting perspective. That France and Germany are so pushing so hard for exceptions for a couple of startups that in a field that is possibly totally irrelevant in a couple of months, but wait and see. I'm gonna again hand over to you, Tia.
Yeah, thank you. So now for the end, I'm going to run you through the AI regulations state of play, and that both at the international front as well as national and regional fronts. There has been a lot of things going on, and mind you, 90% of all things that are here are just from last year. So really a lot going on. Of course, everything will be linked in our show notes after the show. So I decided to begin with kind of an international view of the matter. So Stanford released in 2023 State of AI, meaning that this is the state of AI up to 2022. So we hope that they will have a similar report next year for what happened in 2023. But already there, you can see a lot of graphics showing really how many laws are actually being passed and how fast the things are evolving in the field. Another cool resource is Government AI Readiness Index from 2023 by the Oxford Insights. To sum up the report, we ain't all that ready for whatever is coming, or at least most countries aren't. They have a list of countries ranked with how well prepared they are for what is coming. They have various scores for both how well the government is prepared, but also their infrastructure, as well as the technology sector. So super interesting. Also some super interesting trends, which you can also see on the slide. So for instance, while the number of AI strategies is reducing, so in 2023, we didn't have so many published AI strategies. Most of them came from actually less developed countries, which shows that they are kind of keeping up. So while the rest of us are now thinking about regulations, we have, for instance, Rwanda as the first low-income country to publish an AI strategy. Other than that, we also had 2 documents released by the G7. With astonishing 15 pages, so not a lot there, but still it's important, I guess, that the most developed countries of the world can at least agree on 15 pages as to what should or should not be done. Another important international document, which doesn't tell us a lot, was the Bletchley Declaration, which was passed at the UK AI Safety Summit. Again, not a lot there, but it really shows the initiative and the importance that everybody places in these instruments. On the other hand, one very useful, or two very useful things were published by UNESCO, and those are the ethical impact assessment guidelines and the readiness assessment guidelines. Ethical impact assessments more directed towards developers of the tools, while the readiness assessment directed towards primarily governments of countries, how they can assess how ready they are to implement something or not implement it. So pretty good resource. I can definitely recommend that one. Of course, we have the OECD, which is ever active. These are actually older guidelines, I think from 2019. However, they are constantly being updated, including in 2023 when we had the whole controversy about the definition of an AI system. So that is also something that has to be looked out for. These small changes can mean a lot in the real world. Now moving to a more regional direction, we had Canada, which proposed a bill. Super interesting thing that they proposed in their bill was regulating high impact AI system instead of high risk AI systems, which are regulated by the EU AI Act. Criteria for designating these high impact systems include reasonable possibility to opt out of the use of the system. Super important. Can the citizens actually choose whether they are exposed to a system or not? Determines the system's impact, of course, as well as age of impacted users and the scale of use. Altogether, some pretty solid materials coming in from Canada. We had some developments in Latin America as well, with a couple of countries signing the Declaration of Santiago. This declaration itself has 4 pages, so again, not a lot there. However, we had Brazil compensating for all of it. So Brazil proposed a regulation all the way back in 2020. The law wasn't passed, and that was explained in an astonishing 900 pages as to why the law wasn't adopted. And after the 900 pages, somebody came up with version 2.0. So this proposal is currently being negotiated in Brazil. And Latin America is not the only one doing something. So I already mentioned that some African countries are also showing initiative. This follows the Windhoek statement from 2022, which was supported by UNESCO. And now we have 2 national AI policies published, one in Rwanda and one in Senegal. And now moving all the way over to Japan. Apparently, Japan also should have some draft guidelines. However, I couldn't find them anywhere online. However, they tend to go more in favor of their very soft law approach to regulating and predominantly regulating generative AI. With all the rest of the things, I couldn't find anything. So we'll have to wait and see if Japan actually does something on other fronts as well as wait for the guidelines to actually get published. One country that has been doing a lot, on the other hand, and has been posting a lot is South Korea, which now issued guidance for the safe use of data in the age of AI. Also, they posted an ethical guidance checklist, as well as a guidebook for trustworthy AI. I'm going to have to trust them on all of that's in fact what this is, because it's only available in Korean. However, a lot is being done there. Another positive Asian example I would like to point out is Singapore. which has a much softer and, quite frankly, maybe the soundest approach that I have seen. So they have established an AI Verify Foundation, and they are posting a whole lot of guidelines that are definitely the most human-centric that I have seen. So, for instance, they have a guide to job redesign in the age of AI, which is probably the best title for a guideline that I have read this whole year, and I have read a lot of them. One country that isn't doing that much is Australia. They are taking it very slow, maybe even excruciatingly slow. So in 2019, they posted their ethics framework with 8 principles. And now this year, they started public consultations to ask, should we actually do something more about this AI thing? Based on the 510 submission answers, they probably should, but they still haven't. So waiting on developments in Australia as well. Another country doing a lot, on the other hand, is India. So they proposed both a Digital India Act as well as the recommendations for leveraging artificial intelligence and big data. They started a national program on AI and also established their own ISO type standardization organization, which already published 4 standards that you can see on the slide. So India appears to be definitely a country to look out for. And now we finally come to the 4 big players, although after some of the countries that I mentioned that are doing a lot, I'm not sure that UK belongs on this chart, but it still remains one of the biggest forces with organizing a lot of conferences and holding a lot of talks. So that's why they are still here. And I'm going to begin with the US. The US apparently, well, 25 states at least, according to their statistics, passed laws including some sort of artificial intelligence regulations, and 15 states adopted resolutions or enacted legislations. Here on the slide, you can see some of the examples. So a lot of the countries, a lot of states are doing a lot of different things. For instance, Connecticut now mandates conducting inventory and performing ongoing assessments of systems employing AI and that are in use by state. This is supposed to enter into force in April 2024, if I got that right. Louisiana issued or mandated a study of the impact of artificial intelligence in operations, procurement, and policy. Maryland established a technology grant program, and so on and so forth, as they wrote 25 different states passed different things. So there is a lot going on in the US aside from the obvious things, for instance, the executive orders and the Bill of Rights, which don't tell us that much. The things on the first slide are rather specific and to be looked out for. Of course, NIST is also doing a lot. We already mentioned, I think, this in one of our episodes. They posted a risk management framework, a lot of very smart questions formulated for how you can assess the risks of your AI system. A really good place to start, even for instance, assessing the risks in the light of the AI Act, since we don't have as many guidelines, or at least not any as good as these ones from NIST. So definitely recommend checking that one out if you already haven't. This probably should have belonged earlier on the front. This is something very international. So we had a World Economic Forum that issued guidelines for AI procurement in both public sector as well as private sector. Again, some smart questions, what to be on the lookout for, what to put into the contracts. Great resource, great starting point. Now we finally switch to the UK. As I said, despite their kind of this air of we are still a force here, they aren't actually publishing that much, except for maybe the Ada Lovelace Institute, but they did post an artificial intelligence regulation bill, which will not enter into force for a while now. It's only in its first reading, and of course they have their a pro-innovation approach to AI regulation policy, which was posted, I think, last year, published last year. But still, they appear to be an important player in the field nonetheless. Of course, we have Europe. I will not bother you with this anymore. We have the political agreement on the AI Act. We also have the DSA. We also have the DMA. Those are all fresh regulations, all just entered into force. Well, not the AI Act, but the other two, and all will probably have an impact on AI systems and the providers of these AI systems. So a good read for all of them, if you ask me. Another thing that did come from the EU is procurement of AI guidelines for both high risk as well as non-high risk systems. These are only for public buyers. Still, even private actors can take a look and think about which contract or which standard clauses which are proposed here might also apply when procuring systems for private use. And now finally, the most controversial one for last, I guess, we have China. China has, as a lot of people already know, probably has a lot of very specific AI regulations. Some of them already adopted, some of them not. Most of them already in force, which are adopted. So, for instance, both the interim measures for the management of generative artificial intelligence, as well as the provisions on algorithmic recommendations, are both already in force since last year, whereas the provisions on the administration of deep synthesis are still waiting to enter into force, as well as the basic safety requirements for generative artificial intelligence services, as you can see on the slide, draft for feedback. All the things that are linked here and that will be posted on our channels are translated into English, so you can also check them out. And that would be all for my state of play for AI regulations worldwide.
Thank you, Thea. In the meantime, I had had to deal with my youngest daughter again. She's definitely not happy that I'm here and she's there, and she wanted a sheet of paper to draw on. So I'm gonna give that to her, and I'm gonna wish all of you a nice evening. And,
well, for 20 minutes overtime, I think your daughter has a right to be upset.
She right to be upset. That's good. Part of her children's rights charter. So I love that. Thanks again. Was a very insightful episode. Thank you, Thea. And yeah, thanks everyone.
A pleasure as always. And hope the viewers enjoyed it as well, and hope to see you next time.
Bye. Ciao.